Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 150 of the Retro Gamers podcast. We made it. Larry here.
And Anthony here.
Finally back. What's going on, Ant?
Hey, it's good to be back. And I could have sworn that I was going to miss the 150th episode. And then I just so happened to see episode 149.74. And I was very happy that you held off.
Yes, there is no way, no chance at all that we were going to do 150. Well, I was going to do 150 without you because this is a Wii thing, a WE thing. And yeah, so we when I did last week's episode, we talked about it. I'm like, let's drop an episode. But I'm like, you know what? Let me just stretch that out as much as possible. So we Kingdom Hearts it and stretched it out a little bit more. Last week, thank you, Charles and Josh from Victims and Villains. Actually, you'll hear Josh next week as well. So
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for covering for me while I was overseas.
Yes.
Traveling on business. And,
how was it?
It was.
Okay, fair enough. Is there any retro gaming in China? I mean, like is there anything there?
Well, I'll tell you the truth. I did want to make a point of getting out there to discover some retro gaming. There were a couple of stores that weren't too far away from my hotel, or at least. Which hotel was it? I'm trying to remember because I didn't stay in one place. I basically traveled every 3 days, 2 or 3 days.
You were all constantly on the move.
I was all over the place. Yeah. So every time I was like on a new flight into a new city, new hotel. So it was really hard to kind of find anything. There was one place where I did find a couple of stores that were close to the hotel. I just couldn't get there because I was working.
Fair
so
enough.
I never officially made it out there, unfortunately. And ironically enough, it wasn't even in China where I managed to find the stores. It was in Taipei when I went to Taipei for the last leg of my trip.
Okay.
There were a couple of stores near the hotel, and I just didn't make it there because, again, I was working. So unfortunately, nothing to report retro-wise from China or Taiwan. But I'm hoping that next time I will get an opportunity to get out there and have a decent retro game report.
Awesome. Life finds a way to get in the way of retro gaming.
Yes, exactly. Life finds a way to keep me from getting retro gaming. Yes,
so, but yeah, I'm glad you're back. And this is it. 150 episodes. And I mean, who knew we would last this long? Who had faith?
No, I had none. I had zero.
Figure we start recording. This is just a couple episodes, and we'll be done with it. But no, we like a pesky plague. We keep going.
Yeah, I know. Well, you got to remember, like when we first started doing this, episode 1 was, when I was still living in New York in 2014.
Yes,
and we just did like a little quick 20-minute thing.
Well, to kind of, to bring people up to speed, basically, even before that, the genesis, no pun intended, of the show was, when I was doing my original podcast, More of the Same, which every now and again pops up. You came on, had you on, I think it was the Renaissance Fair. I don't think it was technically Retro Gamers. I was still more of the same. And then you got the bug for it. Everyone always ends up getting that bite. Frank got it. Anthony Chu got it. You got it. And then, that's when we started talking. Like, you know what? Let's try and do this more regularly. And I think the first couple episodes are spaced out. And then there was a little bit of a gap. And then we finally figured out how to get Skype into it. And then once that happened, because that's how we record both the audio and the video, the rest is history.
Yeah, and a great history at that. I never thought that I'd be talking video games every week like we've been doing. That's definitely, and not only that, but I would think at some point we would run out of material, and up until this point, we still haven't.
We're trying.
And until we do, we will continue to talk retro gaming and current gaming. Of course, we mix it up now. We throw in some current gaming because, let's face it, current games are a thing.
That's what's constantly evolving. And yes, technically we are over 150. We have some special editions and stuff like that, but 150 official episodes in the can. And it's been a hell of a ride. Looking forward to more. And, we're just going to get into this one because 150 for us isn't the only celebration this week.
No, absolutely not. It is a very special week in terms of video game history, because 20 years ago, for those of you who do remember, and if you don't, definitely worth looking up if you want to learn some video game history. 20 years ago, on 9/9/99.
9 times. 9/9/99. Yes, I remember.
9/9/99.
I remember the advertisements.
Yes, so do I.
Yep.
We were gifted with the last home console ever to be produced by Sega, the Sega Dreamcast.
Yes, some would say the pinnacle for Sega, probably because it was the last one, so they have no choice. Dreamcast was, I honestly didn't, when the Dreamcast came out, I never would have expected it to be the last home system that Sega put out for, well, basically 20 years, because coming up in a couple of weeks, we have the first party. Sega's own Genesis Mini that's going to be coming out. But, real quick to talk about, remember that advertising? I'm pretty sure they worked with MTV because I think, wasn't it like the movie awards or something that I thought they incorporated it with, or maybe just with MTV. But I remember a lot of, 9/9/99.
Yeah, no, I wish my memory was better, but I really do. But I do remember. I do vaguely recall like MTV having a stake in that.
Yeah,
and I think, or at least having a stake in the advertising for it. But I remember the commercial like 9/9/99.
Yes,
9/9. It was just like they beat it into your head, and you just, I always give it to Sega for their ad campaigns because I always felt like they did really good ad campaigns.
Oh, yeah.
And the Dreamcast one, to me, is one of the most memorable ones because it was very, whatchamacallit? It was, I can't think of the word.
Memorable? It stuck in your head. Like they drilled it in.
Yeah, they were like earworms, basically.
There you go, yeah.
They just managed to stick like earworms. Yeah, they were just earworms, and you were just constantly repeating it, and you could not wait for 9/9/99. You just could not wait for it. And let's face it, of all the systems that have ever come out, right, that have ever been released, I can't recall a more iconic date to release a system on. When you think about it, just think about, what other date could you do that with besides 9/9/99?
It was perfect. And during that era, if for those of you who remember, who are old enough to remember, around that time, we were getting ready to approach the millennium. We were getting ready to approach the year 2000. And I remember everything leading up to it was all like, that was the thing. When the year 2000 hit, everything had 010100 on it. Like it was just those repeating numbers because we started hitting years. And then like for the next 10 years, like 2222. We'll get to that in a few years. But in any event, those repeating numbers, but the 9/9/99, the end of the 90s, the start, like, we were supposed to have flying cars in the year 2000, but the Dreamcast was the system that, in my opinion, brought the true arcade experience home.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's without question. There was, we're gonna talk about the, basically our memories of the Dreamcast, but it was by far and away the most powerful console to be released at the time.
Yep.
And the arcade experience on it was bar none the best I've ever experienced, on a home console system. And I got to say, like, even up until today, like when I think about my PS4 and my Xbox One and stuff like that, even my Switch, I'm having great experiences on it. But when I try and think of the arcade experience, I always attribute it to the Dreamcast. That's where I always go back to. There was just something about that system that it just felt like I had brought the arcade home with me.
It did. First of all, it was the first system to run on like Windows It ran on Windows CE, it was called. So it was basically like a home. It was almost, not really, but it was basically like a home computer, in your house. The first game that pops off as far as arcade quality, not the first game, we'll get into that. Mm-hmm. But the first arcade game I remember, and I think I bought, was Crazy Taxi. And the way...
Crazy Taxi.
Like, I can remember it now, putting in the game, hitting play, and just the way it ran, it ran so smooth, and it truly felt like, I'm like, where do I put the quarter? I'm going to jam it into one of these controller ports. Yep. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think there were, I'm trying to think of like a number of like the arcade style games that I played. Like, to me, the first one that always comes out in my brain is Soul Calibur.
Yes.
Soul Calibur on the Dreamcast was absolutely beautiful.
Amazing.
Completely stunning. And I remember playing it because I was like, I remember when I first got it, because I'm like, Soul Calibur did not have a large number of fighters in the game.
No, not at all.
And I'm like, okay, and this was, and of course this was, this was on the eve of like Mortal Kombat Trilogy and stuff like that, where there were like a ton of fighters. And I'm like, well, Soul Calibur doesn't have a whole lot, but let me tell you something. Like, when you bit into that game,
forget about it.
The animations were fluid. The fighting was intense. Again, the 3D environments were so just gorgeous for, especially for that time. I mean, 20 years later, we're playing games, obviously, that are so much more cinematic in quality. But but I realized, but honestly, like Sega, I really thought, like, put their stamp on it with games like that. Like, I still have Soul Calibur for my Dreamcast. And God, I mean, it's one of those games that I'll go back to every once in a while just to remind myself of how awesome it was.
I remember, again, it's the smoothness of how the games ran. It was fantastic. So, the system comes out on $99.99. I'm pretty sure I did not buy it day one. I'm pretty sure I got it for Christmas that year.
I bought it day one.
Okay, all right. Hold on, wait, I was in college. Maybe I did buy it day one.
Yeah, no, I remember. I may have had. I don't know if I had it on pre-order or not, but I definitely bought it the first day. Like, I had to have it.
Oh yeah, no, it was a must. It was it was either $99.99 or December 25th, 99. One of those days, I eventually got it. We played a lot of it in college. I do remember that. But let's talk about the system itself. Like we mentioned, Windows CE. It ran and played discs. Let's talk about the controller for a moment.
Okay, so
it was a little weird.
Yeah, I think the controller was probably the misstep on the Sega Dreamcast. Like, if I had to pick something that I felt like didn't go right, that controller was really an uncomfortable hunk of plastic.
Really, it was odd. The oddest thing about it, in my opinion, is the wire. The wire normally, yes. So everyone's used to wireless now, but kids back in the day, you actually had to plug the controller into the system you were using, and normally the plug would come out the top, which makes total sense. But no, this one dropped out the bottom.
Yeah, and it was really weird. Yeah, it was just really weird because, like, and then on the back of the controller, there was like a little divot that you could put the wire in so that it would go out the back.
I forgot about that. You kind of run it along the back, but that never held.
Yeah. But you know what? But there was a reason. There was a specific reason why the wire came out the bottom. And you know this. It was because on the top, you were able to insert a virtual memory unit, or VMU, into the system, which was basically, where you would save your games. And then on top of it, it was also the first system and first controller, obviously, to come out with a second screen, which was really, really cool.
Basically, yeah, like Anthony said, this little memory card, the VMU, had a little screen on it, very tiny, so you weren't really playing major games on it, but it was a second screen. Normally, it would just display the logo of the game. But games like Sonic Adventure would take advantage of this memory card, because when you pop the memory card out, which had a very tiny D-pad and very tiny A and B buttons, like with Sonic, you can play like a Tamagotchi style game.
Yeah, and as long as you kept the batteries running on it, by the way, because remember that thing,
right.
it was a battery operated VMU. Now, granted, you didn't lose your saves if the batteries went dead. It's just that you couldn't play on the second screen when the batteries died. So you had to make sure that the batteries were always up on that. But again, it was just a very innovative thing for Sega to do, to also kind of up the ante on their system, especially when the competition was was getting really fierce in the marketplace, because you had Nintendo 64 and the Sony PlayStation, which, became a huge success.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk about with the system here. And we're getting some reverb.
I'm sorry. I'm very curious as to how the reverb happens. Because it happens sometimes, that happen all the time.
It does. I think we're going to just take a very, for you, it's going to be half a second. Oh, it's gone. Never mind. Nope, we're not taking a break. Folks, this is what happens on episode 150. We finally figuring out how these programs work. We're good with the reverb. And
we still managed to screw it up.
And we're moving forward.
But anyway, let's talk really quick. I want to do just some really quick hits.
Go for it.
On the Dreamcast. So for those of you who don't know, Sega Dreamcast was part of the 6th generation of home console releases. As we said, it was released in the U.S. on September 9th, 1999, or obviously more memorable, 9/9/99. It was released in Japan, though, almost an entire year earlier. Japan always got their systems first.
I didn't realize it was that long earlier, that far beforehand.
Yeah, it was released in Japan November 27th, 1998.
Wow.
So they had the system for almost an entire year before it came out here in the U.S. It debuted at $199 here.
It was only $199?
Yeah, we didn't start getting into the we didn't start getting into the $300 systems, I think, until PS2 and Xbox.
I could have sworn that was more money. Okay, cool.
No, came out for $199.
Take it.
And just a little bit on the specs for it. Mm-hmm. The media, it was 1 gigabyte GD-ROM and CD-ROM.
Okay.
The CPU was 32-bit at 200 megahertz, which is still, by today's standards, super slow. The memory was 16 megabytes of RAM, 8 megabytes of video RAM, 2 megabytes of audio RAM. And the removable storage, that little VMU, was a whopping 128 kilobytes.
Woo! Just pushing the graphics.
Exactly. It was also the first. It weighed 3.3 pounds. You want to know.
It was a little chubby.
Yep, and it also was the it was officially discontinued March 31st. 2001. It had a terribly short lifespan of about a year and a half here in the U.S.
Day after my birthday.
And it sold 9.13 million units, which again wasn't very good. Again, this was the last system to come out for Sega. Sega left the hardware, the home console business at least, after the Dreamcast, and just stuck to creating software. Last thing to point out, and we'll probably talk about this more for the rest of this segment, the games that came out for it. So not a bad release, because when the system came out, there were 18 launch titles.
19, I think.
And what?
Maybe 19.
I have a list here of 18.
10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Well, I'm counting 19.
Okay, well, you count 19. The 18 I have listed, according to IGN, from 9/9/99 is, and there are some really solid hitters on here. So we got Power Stone, Mortal Kombat Gold, Soul Calibur, Sonic Adventure, which to me was the definitive.
That was the one
launch title.
Yep,
absolutely fantastic. Expendable, which was an action game. Blue Stinger, which was an adventure game, and then we got some racing games: Trick Style, Hydro Thunder, Tokyo Extreme Racer, Flag to Flag, Monaco Grand Prix 2, Pen Trill Salon, or Trial Salon, I'm not sure which one, and TNN Motorsports Hardcore Heat. It was clear that they were showing the power of this system through racing games.
Totally.
And then shooter-wise, House of the Dead 2, which was a fantastic arcade game, and like we talked about before, that translated to the Dreamcast phenomenally well. Mm-hmm. Air Force Delta.
Okay.
And then we got Arrow Wings, which was a sim game.
Mm-hmm.
And for sports, again, love the sports games on this system. NFL 2K, NFL Blitz 2000, and last but not least, one of the most fun games I ever played on the Dreamcast, Ready to Rumble Boxing.
Nice. I think the one that wasn't counted was Cart Flag to Flag, but be that as it may, which actually came out made by Sega. The lineup. 18, 19, whatever. There's really like 5 games that people paid attention to. Heck of a lineup. First of all, before we get into the big one with Sonic, let's talk about the 2K series. Because the 2K series debuted on the Dreamcast. Now, that's all we see is the 2K series. Except for Madden. Madden. Yeah. But in any event, 2K... NFL 2K was phenomenal. NFL Blitz 2000, that I remember playing. NFL Blitz was basically the NBA Jam for NFL. Mm-hmm. And the gameplay was so fun. It was purely arcade. But again, just because it was purely arcade, it had that feel of an arcade right there at home. I didn't realize, I forgot Mortal Kombat Gold was a launch title. So that's pretty cool. And as you mentioned, Sega became so synonymous with Mortal Kombat, dating back to the Genesis when it first released, that it just made sense. But let's talk about the one, the game that should have came with the Dreamcast. We're talking about Sonic Adventure.
Yes, Sonic Adventure was just a phenomenal game, and we were also at this point now where games weren't packaged with systems. I mean, that went the wayside. I think. I was gonna say that ended with the 16-bit era, because when Sony placed, I don't know if Sony PlayStation was the first one to come out without a game packed in, but like that's pretty much where the line started to get drawn.
I know the N64 definitely didn't. So
no, it did not.
But yeah, so let's go with Sonic. Yeah.
No, but I was gonna say, but let's talk about Sonic, because
Sonic Adventure.
If there was anything to really showcase the power of the system, Sonic Adventure definitely was. Just every aspect of that game to me was phenomenal. I mean, it really was. Right from the opening sequence, just when you're watching the opening sequence, you're literally sitting there and you're like, "Holy cow! Do I get to actually play the game like this?"
That giant water monster and everything coming through the city and stuff like that. Sonic Adventure in the vein of Super Mario 64, 3D, but it definitely wasn't polygons, we'll tell you that much. I remember, it was weird because it taking Sonic out of, forget about the 2D part, because I think we were ready for, a good 3D Sonic game, not like Sonic 3D. But to see Sonic, and it was weird because he was like interacting with humans in that game, which was a little odd. But it was the perfect game to truly show that the Dreamcast wasn't just going to be an arcade port for games. It was going to be, for first-party games, it was going to pump out the graphics. It was going to pump out these games, because Sonic Adventure, which has been re-released multiple times, it came out on the GameCube. It came out on the PS3 and Xbox 360 with slightly updated graphics. But Sonic Adventure, when you think Dreamcast, it's kind of sad to say, it's probably really the only game of maybe 2 or 3 that people immediately think of when they think of Dreamcast.
Yeah, I think that's definitely correct. Because again, the Dreamcast didn't have, unfortunately, there was a reason why it had a short lifespan. It did not have a ton of games that people found really memorable. Especially when a lot of the games that you could get on the Dreamcast, you either already had or could get on the PlayStation, which most people already owned. Mm-hmm. So, and that was part of the problem for them. But yeah, Sonic Adventure, probably one of the 2 or 3 most well-known games. And by the way, it was the best-selling game on the system. It sold somewhere between 2.5. I want to say it sold 2.5 million units. So basically. Yeah, so about like 25 to 30% of all Dreamcast owners own Sonic Adventure.
And with Sonic Adventure, the replay value of Sonic was awesome as well, because, not only do you defeat the game with Sonic, then you go back and play as Tails, you play as Knuckles, Amy, a big cat, and even that robot. Yeah. So, so Sonic Adventure, definitely a pinnacle of the Dreamcast. What are some of the other games that you remember really playing, really having a good time playing?
Well, outside of Sonic and Soul Calibur, I was wise enough to pick up Tony Hawk Pro Skater and Pro Skater 2 on the Dreamcast instead of the PlayStation. And man, was I happy I made that decision, because those games on the Dreamcast were, in my opinion, were markedly superior to the Sony PlayStation versions.
I personally remember Tony Hawk 2 on N64. That's the one I played it on. But when I would go over your house, when I first played it on Dreamcast, first of all, the music. That's what aided, that part for the Dreamcast, because it was on a CD. The music was phenomenal in Tony Hawk.
Oh, yeah, no, the music bar none. I mean, if anything, I was obviously late to the game, but I got to learn about the musical genre known as ska, thanks to Tony Hawk Pro Skater. And in fact, I still have the title track of that, Superman. I still have that on my computer, and I still play it. I still play it rather often when I'm listening to music, because it was just, every time I hear that song, it immediately brings me back to playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater, which, just absolutely fantastic.
And also the Dreamcast also lended to some games getting a good upgrade, if you will. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think your definitive version of Resident Evil is Code Veronica on Dreamcast.
Well, I believe, if I wasn't mistaken, Resident Evil Code Veronica was actually exclusive to the Dreamcast at the time.
Sworn it was on PlayStation. All right, I may stand corrected.
No, okay. I do not believe so. The one that
you're right. You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Code Veronica was exclusive to Dreamcast, and let me tell you something. If you're a fan of the Resident Evil series and you have not played Code Veronica, you are missing out. Code Veronica was one of, probably to me, it kind of rivals Resident Evil 2 as like the definitive Resident Evil game. Like Resident Evil 2 for me is always going to be the best one. I was like, but Code Veronica is right out there with it.
No, totally. I was thinking of PlayStation 2. It came out on PS2. I forgot about that.
Yeah, it came out on PS2, but that was obviously after the Dreamcast was discontinued. I also had Resident Evil 3 Nemesis on the Dreamcast, which was also released on the PlayStation. But
maybe that's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, graphically much better on the Dreamcast, for sure. And basically, whenever a game came out for both systems, I always bought the Dreamcast version, because I knew I was going to get something. Again, it was going to look better. I felt like it was going to play better. And in every case, I was right.
That's a really good point to make. Back talking about like Super Nintendo and Genesis, it's kind of like if the same game came out on both systems, which one do you go for? And then with this one, you can kind of say, even go to the point of saying N64, PlayStation 1, or Dreamcast. And Dreamcast definitely had the leg up.
Yeah, there's no question about it. The biggest issue with it is because it was competing with two systems that had already come out. And not only had already come out, but they had come out several years prior. Mm-hmm. Like, they should have really been considered the next generation of systems as opposed to the previous. So, in other words, like I would lump the Dreamcast in with the PlayStation 2 and the GameCube. Mm-hmm. However, the way history is set up, it's been lumped in with the original PlayStation and the N64. And at that point, because games were being made for sometimes all three systems, people would defer to PlayStation or N64 because they already had the system, and they wouldn't buy it on the Dreamcast, which again is also one of the reasons why I felt like it failed.
All right. Now with the Dreamcast, we also had some good peripherals for it. First of all, it was the first system. Other systems have done it before, but Dreamcast was basically the first one to really take it to online gaming. Yes,
SegaNet, which was the introduction of the internet or at least the internet in the U.S. on systems. The internet actually dates all the way back, and we've talked about this. Dates all the way back to the Famicom in Japan. They had an online system on that, but for us in the States, the Dreamcast was really the first home console. It actually, do you remember, it had a jack in the back to plug it in. So you can play it online, which was awesome. Now, I never took advantage of that.
Neither have I.
So, unfortunately, I missed out on that part.
Was there? Why do I remember you can take that? Oh no, I'm thinking of GameCube. I thought it was removable. The phone jack. It wasn't even an Ethernet. It was a phone jack.
Yep, it was a phone jack. I don't know why I think it's
nope. Some other cool stuff on it that took advantage. Do you remember the keyboard and typing of the day?
Yes.
That was a fun one.
Typing of the day, yeah, I mean, it sounds lame. It does. It sounds lame when you think about it.
It does, yeah.
You're asking me to type, but it actually wound up being a very unique, fun experience on the system.
I loved that game. Actually, recently, Game On, the boys over there had it set up with the typewriter, Typing of the Dead. And it was it's still a difficult game to play, as weird as that sounds, because not all the words are regular words. Some of them just kind of just hit one letter or a number or something. Also, let's talk about one of the oddest games in gaming was on the Dreamcast. And if you don't know what it is, it sounds very weird. Seaman.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember that one? So,
yes.
Before everyone starts...
Officially pronounced Seaman.
Correct. So before everyone starts getting on us, Seaman was a game that you basically raised a fish with a very, very freaky human face. What was even weirder was that Leonard Nimoy was the one that was narrating the game.
Yeah, it was just, God, one of the strangest things ever put together, and yet it's just one of those games that everybody talks about when you talk about the Sega Dreamcast. Seaman seems to come up all the time,
and it had a microphone, so that plugged into the port there. I'm trying to think. They had a rumble pack that went into it. So Dreamcast, Sega tried what they could with the Dreamcast. I'm pretty sure there was a light gun that came out for the Dreamcast. I don't remember.
Peripheral-wise, yeah.
But I feel like there was one. I'm not talking about like the one that came with like GunCon games. But Dreamcast, also the other thing I want to talk about real quick about Dreamcast games. Do you remember Bleem?
Yeah.
BLEEM. So Bleem was this company that I remember seeing it in the store. I'm like, what is this? Bleem put out basically it was for 3 games that would let you play PlayStation games on the Dreamcast. The 3 games were Gran Turismo 2, Tekken 3, and Metal Gear Solid. And basically it was just a boot up disc. And then you switched out and you put the PS1 game into the Dreamcast and it played, and it did up the graphics a little bit. Sony amazingly unsuccessfully sued Bleem, I guess for copyright or something like that. I forgot the reason why they lost the thing, but I thought that was very weird. But also seeing how Dreamcast ran on a Windows program makes sense.
Yeah, no, it made total sense. And again, it was just something. It's like an odd piece of video game history. And it's surprising that Sega was able to get away with it.
Or Bleem did, yeah.
Or Bleem, I should say.
So let's talk about. I'm sure there's some fun facts about the Dreamcast.
Yeah, there are some fun facts. I just wanted to throw in another game really quick. A couple of other games before we get into a couple of fun facts about this. And one of them was this horror game that I love playing called Illbleed. Do you remember Illbleed?
Oh, I do remember Illbleed. Yes.
Yeah, and basically every level was you were going through a different just a different horror movie experience. Basically, it was like a haunted theme amusement park and like a creepy mansion and things like that. It was just a really awesome game. And again, the whole idea behind the game was you didn't have any weapons per se, but the whole idea was you were going through these levels, and the goal was to not die of fright. And you had like a heartbeat on the screen, and things would jump out and scare you. And when you got too scared, you would literally just like drop dead of a heart attack,
as you do in real life.
Yeah, exactly. It was just a really innovative game. And then the other one I wanted to bring up, because you and I both big wrestling fans, WWF Royal Rumble,
yes,
on the Dreamcast, which was basically an arcade. It was an arcade style game. It did not have a large roster, but it was the first game wrestling wise, and maybe to this day the only game wrestling wise, correct me if I'm wrong, 8 players on the screen at once.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, especially in a Royal Rumble, with that game. Yeah, I think so. Well, maybe the newer ones nowadays can have 8 players or 8 characters on the screen. But when that came out, you're right, Ant. That was very revolutionary, especially for us, like you said, where we're used to only 4 guys in the ring at once for a Royal Rumble. And yeah, it was purely arcade. There wasn't a story mode, nothing like that. But it was fun. That's what was cool. They're like, it was almost like an oversized portable game. It's pick up and play. That's it. You don't worry about anything else. Play, done, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was just really, really cool. And I just wanted to bring that up because I remember us playing that a lot. So then a couple of other, just a few other fun facts I'll just throw out there because we've already kind of gone over most of them, just discussing. But first one to throw out there was that the Dreamcast wasn't the first official name for the system. I don't know if you know this, but
hold on. Let me think. I want to say Ultra 64 would have been the N64. The Dolphin was the GameCube. I can't. When you say it, I'm going to remember. Revolution?
No, it wasn't Revolution. It was originally called the Katana.
Oh,
it was the Sega Katana.
Yeah, way off on that.
And then they switched it to Dreamcast, which, to be honest with you, I think is a far superior name. Anyway,
totally.
One record that Sega Dreamcast held at the time was when it was announced. At the time, Sony PlayStation had the record for pre-orders at the time, because when Sony announced their PlayStation, they had hit 200,000 pre-orders for the system, which at that time was a big deal.
Yeah.
Dreamcast flew past that and hit 250.
Oh, wow.
250,000 pre-order. So they actually held the record at the time for more pre-orders than any other system. Cool thing about their games was to combat piracy. Do you remember like the black side of the discs? Like
on a Dreamcast game?
Yeah, on Dreamcast games.
I don't remember them having a black underbottom. I know PlayStation did, but that was just pure aesthetic. Had nothing to do with anything. On PlayStation.
I thought they did that, but in order to avoid piracy, that's where the whole GD-ROM format came out. They came out with this format called GD-ROM so that you couldn't copy the disc.
Gotcha.
Because remember, Sony had a lot of piracy issues because you could essentially copy a Sony PlayStation game easily and play it on the system.
Yep.
So Sega came up with their own format called the GD-ROM to stop people from, piracy.
Okay.
To your point, we already talked about EA and the 2K series, which is amazing. Here's something I actually didn't know until I looked this up, but there was originally supposed to be a partnership between Sega and Microsoft on the Dreamcast that fell through.
Okay, that makes sense because of the Windows.
Yeah, what happened was the Sega talked to Microsoft about allowing Dreamcast games to play on the Xbox because they were developing the Xbox after the Dreamcast decided that they were going to discontinue.
Like a backwards capability? Kind of, sort of?
No, basically, like all Dreamcast games are playable on the Xbox. The reason why the talks fell through is because Sega insisted that online gameplay be a major part of it. And Microsoft at that point with the Xbox wasn't doing online gaming.
Yeah.
So because of that, deal never happened.
Boo.
Otherwise, all Dreamcast games would have been playable on the Xbox.
No, that would have been phenomenal.
Yep. So let's see. We talked about Windows CE. We talked about you were talking about the camera peripheral for the system. There was a game called Visual Park that came with the camera system.
Wait a minute, I don't remember a camera system.
There was a camera system. It was called the Dream Eye.
Oh, yes. Oh, I may have had that. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Why does that sound so familiar?
Yep.
Interesting.
Because not only could you play video games with it, you were able to take pictures with it and email them with the use of a memory card.
Okay.
It had a photo editing program.
Well, that doesn't sound too familiar anymore. But the Dream Eye sounds familiar. Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe it never came out in the States. I don't know.
Okay. Well, still
I don't
sounds
have that information. Yeah. But it was just an interesting thing. Let's see. The last game on the do you remember the fishing rod?
Yes. Yeah, that I do. Yep.
I forgot the name of that. It was Sega Bass Fishing?
Yeah.
I think it was. That was the main driver, and it came with a little fishing rod controller, so you would actually go fishing.
I forgot. Yeah.
Which was really cool. And then there was I want to say the last thing I want to bring up. a game we did not talk about that was phenomenal on the Dreamcast, and most remember was is it Shenmue? How do you say that?
Oh, Shenmue, yes.
Shenmue.
Oh,
Shenmue
yes, that
Shenmue
started
2.
there, yes.
They started on the Dreamcast. And then the last official game for the Dreamcast. Now, remember, we said this got discontinued in 2001, but the last official game on the system released by Sega was actually 6 years later in 2007.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's
interesting.
An interesting. It was an interesting little thing.
I have seen recently. I've actually seen an influx of homebrews for the Dreamcast. So that's starting to become a bigger thing now.
Yeah, the homebrew market for Dreamcast is. I mean, homebrews are becoming pretty much. People are creating homebrews for every system, but going all the way back to like the early 2000s. They were making Atari. Remember, people were making Atari games. Like,
this is like the first time I've seen it for a CD-based system. I'm not saying they're not out there, but I haven't seen any like for the PlayStation or Xbox.
No, I agree with you on that. I think Dreamcast is like the first, at least the most significant CD-based system that I've heard of. I don't think anybody's clamoring to make homebrews for the GameCube. So,
oh, boo! Such an
I know, but so. But anyway, those were basically just the other little fun facts that we did not touch on as we were talking about the Dreamcast. But again, I mean, 20 years later, to me, like, I still look back fondly on the Dreamcast as one of the systems I had the most fun with. Even though the library was somewhat limited.
Yeah, that's all right. You know what? That's what makes it. Sometimes it's the intimacy of having that smaller library that kind of makes the system even more lovable. And hopefully, knock on wood or stucco or whatever I got here, the Polymega will be able to update themselves for Dreamcast. Because I'm dying. I haven't played a Dreamcast game like on Dreamcast in a long time. I've gotten Crazy Taxi on Xbox and a couple other games, the Sonic Adventure games I got on GameCube and stuff like that. But hopefully we'll see that resurgence of Dreamcast hopefully sometime soon.
Larry, let's continue our love for the Dreamcast just a little bit longer this week's Did You Know segment.
What could we possibly talk about that we haven't already mentioned?
So you should mention that. This is actually a piece of information I did not know until I was doing my research on the Dreamcast. But in the last segment, we had talked about how the Dreamcast discs, or Sega, I should say, created the GD-ROM disc to avoid piracy. Something that the PlayStation was suffering from. Yeah. However, did you know that on each GD-ROM disc there was a hidden Easter egg that was related to the piracy?
Was it really?
Yes. So on every disc, and you can try this out if you should happen to have a standard CD player at home.
Oh, okay.
If you still have a CD player, you can insert your Dreamcast games into a CD player.
Yeah.
And there is one playable track on every Dreamcast disc.
Oh, wow.
On that track, it says, this is the message it says, this is a Dreamcast disc and is for use only on a Dreamcast unit. Playing this disc on hi-fi or other audio equipment can cause serious damage to its speakers. Please stop this disc now.
It will self-destruct in 3, 2, 1. That's interesting. I probably have done that, but just forgot because who of us haven't put in like a PlayStation game hoping that like the music would play unless it's like Symphony of the Night. Right. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was just a little element to almost like it was like a little treat for anybody who tried to do something different with a Dreamcast disc.
I like how Sega's like, if they're going to try and put this into a CD player, we're going to blow out their stereo speakers. So let's give them a warning.
We will destroy your stereo system if you do not remove this disc right now.
And then you can go to Sony and purchase a new pair of speakers.
Exactly. But, hey, kudos to Sega for doing something like that because they were, piracy was a big thing on their
totally.
Plate. So just a really cool little useless piece of information for everybody who did not know that Sega Dreamcast games do have a playable track on them. And that is this week's Did You Know?
Okay, we are going to try and finish episode 150 here. We had some technical issues. And we're going to talk about some news first, and a lot of the news actually came from Nintendo Direct that dropped last week.
Yeah, I was actually really surprised with some of the stuff they came out with too. So let's get to it.
Yeah, no, they definitely have some cool stuff here, and I'm just going to keep on going. So we got 20 games available now for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, Nintendo Switch Online. We finally got it, and it's basically a better version of the Super NES Classic on the Switch.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, if you're willing to pay the annual fee of whopping $20, you can now access 20 Super Nintendo games along with the NES library that they are constantly updating on there.
Yeah, so let's talk about them real quick. These are the 20 games, which actually is a really good lineup, I gotta say. So, of course, we got some of the obvious ones. Super Mario World, Super Metroid, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, Star Fox, Pilot Wings that I hated, I know you love.
Yes, I do.
Demon's Crest, which I can't wait to stop playing. Brawl Brothers, which is a fun one. Kirby's Dream Land 3. Super Soccer. Super EDF, Earth Defense Force. I actually played this. It's a shoot 'em up. Awesome. I never played it before. That one is fantastic. Very cool. Yeah. Mentioned Super Mario Kart, F-Zero, Kirby's Dream Course, Super Puyo Puyo 2, which is an imported version of the game.
Yes.
Super Tennis, The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, Stunt Race FX, which is the first time I believe this game has been re-released. It's actually a very fun game. I tried it. It's a racer. Very polygony. Super Ghouls and Ghosts, Breath of Fire, and Joe and Mac 2, Lost in the Tropics.
Nice.
So
basically, for those of you who did not buy a Super Nintendo Mini, this is basically the response to that.
Yep. And of course, like they did with the NES, where you can buy NES controllers, you will be able to buy wireless Super Nintendo controllers for the Switch. They're not available for purchase yet. They're only available to those with Nintendo Online. Not a free subscription, but a full paid subscription, not the 7-day trial. And the weird thing is, they're only, unlike the 2-pack for the NES, this one is only one controller per pack, but you can buy up to 4 of them. So that's interesting. And it does not charge attached to the Switch. It actually will charge via USB-C, which I think is awesome.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah. And, being able to play, just being able to play wirelessly is, an awesome perk.
So that's going to be some cool stuff there. So check out the Super NES lineup. Very, very cool. And with the rest of the stuff from the Nintendo Direct, I mean, we get a lot of re-releases. Yes,
and probably the one at the top of both of our lists was the or was this announced on Nintendo Direct, or did we know this before? No, I think it was on Nintendo Direct. The Aladdin Lion King remaster.
Oh, no, that wasn't on the Nintendo Direct, but it has been released. It has been mentioned already. I think GameStop dropped it. Yes, we are getting the re-release of Aladdin and the Lion King as a 2-pack on Switch and PlayStation. On Microsoft, on Xbox. Slight correction from last week when I was talking to Josh. The Super Nintendo versions are actually not going to be on this collection. It's going to be
the Genesis ones.
It's the Genesis versions, and then with Aladdin, it's the Game Boy, and then the Game Boy Color versions of the games. I don't know why they have those two. I don't think the Game Boys were different other than the graphics, but and then the Lion King will have the Genesis version, the Game Boy version, and the NES version. So that's interesting.
Wait, the NES
There was
version?
an NES Lion King, yeah.
Wow, okay. Yep. That's interesting. Now, I wonder why they held off. I wonder if Super Nintendo is planning something with those two games.
I think it's just the Genesis games were better than the Super NES games.
No, it's entirely possible, yeah.
So, and really not much gameplay difference between those two, other than like some of the graphics. So I figure go Genesis on that one. Now, granted, with an update later on, they can probably download something or something become available, like Konami did with their collections. But still, I believe it comes out next month. I don't have the exact, maybe November. But yeah, these are two games, and Josh mentioned last week with the re-release, with Disney putting out the live action versions, now's the best time than ever to put those games out.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And yeah, especially with the films, it's perfect.
Yeah. Also mentioned on the Nintendo Direct, and we've been seeing some N64 games being released on the Nintendo Switch, and for that matter, some of the other consoles as well. But we are getting, and we've already gotten Doom 1, 2, and 3 on the modern consoles. These aren't just Nintendo, but we are now getting Doom 64.
Nice.
That was a great version of the game.
Nice.
I'm just looking at the list here. Oh, another game that was released on the PC and I think on GameCube as well. So as far as I know, it's technically kind of the first GameCube re-release on modern. I'm not just going to say Nintendo. I got this from Nintendo Direct, but on the modern consoles. Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast.
Oh, I heard. I never played that one, but I heard it was a really solid game.
You know, they started showing, like, it was Star Wars, and they started showing, I'm like, oh, Shadow of the Empire. Oh, my God. But,
that would be cool.
But it was this one. But that's okay. That's cool. Some other releases on here. Tetris 99. For those of you who don't like downloadable content, Tetris 99 will have a physical copy that's now available with the DLC.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Speaking of which.
This isn't exactly DLC, but it's not it's not a podcast episode unless somebody makes a cameo.
Look, God, he's like such a miserable face. He just wants the world to burn. And then the other thing I've been seeing on Nintendo, everything that gets re-released is a definitive edition. Everything is definitive, which basically is the old game plus old DLC. Originally from the Wii, the let me try that again. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is coming to Nintendo. And then they mentioned some other games, like Luigi's Mansion 3 and Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, Animal Crossing, stuff like that, Trials of Mana. So it's a good lineup. If you haven't checked out the Nintendo Direct, go check it out. So some good stuff coming up with Nintendo, even with the other systems as well, because a lot of these games are coming out on Xbox One and PS4.
Yeah.
And one of the final things I want to mention, it's episode 150. It's time of celebration. It's time of joyfulness. I got the champagne is on ice. Gonna have a little bit of the bubbly. That's the new thing that I love. But I have to mention something that's upset me. I've lost some sleep over this. And it's probably, we may need to get Josh on here because I just need, he's, when it comes to struggling, he's good to talk to. I don't want to talk to.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to talk to me either.
I kid because I love. But no, it really was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Okay. I've had to purchase a game through limited run.
Wait a minute. The limited run?
I need a moment.
Moment's over.
Limited run. You've won the battle as they've released Jay and Silent Bob's Mole Brawl is coming out on NES cartridges. It's going to be a digital game. It's actually what it is another game coming out, Chaotic Brawl, Chronic Brawl, probably Chronic Brawl, but a fighter, kind of like a Final Fight type game that they're going to be releasing on the computer. I'm still not 100% sure if it's coming out on home console, but when they did it wasn't a Kickstarter, but something like that. There was a free downloadable 8-bit game called Jay and Silent Bob's Mole Brawl, and they decided it's going to be digital. You'll be able to eventually buy it. But Limited Run put out a physical cartridge. There's 3 of them, actually. There's Traditional Gray, which I got. Go with Traditional Gray. And then there's there's a Jay Yellow and a Silent Bob Green. So 3 different cartridges. And also there's which I did not order this, but there's also like a box set with like the soundtrack and some other, like a mini poster and some other stuff that came out for it. Now, the saving grace for me is that I didn't order it directly through Limited Run. I ordered it through like the Jay and Silent Bob page for the game.
Okay.
Now, also, I pre-ordered it, and the way Limited Run likes to screw people is that you have like a 27-second window to be able to pre-order these games. And I pre-ordered it like a week and a half before the official pre-order on Limited Run. So I'm waiting for someone to screw me because I've already paid for it and tell me, oh, no, you had to get it through Limited Run. So I'm waiting for the ball to drop.
And if it does, I will just laugh hysterically. Sorry.
But I got my buddy at work, I think, who ordered a couple of copies as well. And again, I'm going to get some of the Star Wars games from him because I'd rather pay him more money than Limited Run. But
that makes sense.
Limited Run, you've won this round, and it's going to be the only time you ever win the battle. I'm going to win the war on Limited Run.
Yeah, no, I don't see that happening.
And something made me happy. And of course, the views that I express on Limited Run are those of mine and mine only. Anthony loves Limited Run, so whatever. But I did see something that made me happy online when someone posted on a page, a group that I'm part of online, when they're like, I know a lot of people have things to say about Limited Run, but this is still cool. And then they showed the Jay and Silent Bob thing. So I'm not the only one who has issues with Limited Run, but whatever. So I hate to close this show on a downer, but I had to mention that.
Well, we're not going to close it on a downer. I do have one quick thing to announce.
Okay, good.
Which is there's currently a PS4 game sale going on. I think it goes through September 17th.
I got to check that out.
Yeah, I've already checked it out, and they've got some really good sales. Couple other things to point out on the retro side of things is the Disney Afternoon Collection. If you haven't purchased it yet, that includes the game DuckTales, DuckTales 2, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, all those good old Disney games from the NES. It is currently 75% off, so you can pick it up for $5.
Ooh, got to get on that.
So if you want that, if you haven't bought that yet, definitely pick that up. Also, some of the Acclaim, I want to say, the Acclaim or the Capcom classic games, like Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, stuff like that, they're all half off for like $2 each. So I picked up Miss Pac-Man.
That's a win.
Fun. Pac-Man Championship Edition is on sale.
I love that game.
That
game's fantastic.
Yeah, that game is awesome. So, so definitely check out the PS4 game sale if you haven't yet, and you can pick yourself up some good retro classics for a great price.
Sounds good to me. All right. And with that, I think we'll wrap this up.
Larry, really quickly, did you pre-order the Aladdin Lion King remasters?
Anthony does not want this to end. No, I have not. I'm just going to get it digitally, so I'm just going to wait for it to come out.
You need to. And I just realized that Link probably gave me a good moment because, look, we can redo the Lion King right now.
Can you feel the... All right, now it's getting pornographic. The love tonight.
Bye.
now he's off to cause a stampede.
He would be the stampede. He's a big cat.
He is totally Scar. No, I did not pre-order it yet. Mine's all digital, so...
okay.
And are we ready? Are you done? Are we going to close this? All righty. So, we're going to close up this wonderful episode of 150 episodes of the Retro Gamers Podcast. Next week, we just signed that Josh is going to be on next week. I don't know what we're going to talk about. We're going to do a bit of a hybrid episode with him, with Victims and Villains. So that should be interesting. I have a feeling it's going to be an interesting conversation, but a very curt conversation right at the end. I feel like it, may have to end it on a note there.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
And one of us may be wearing the same shirt. And with that, check us out everywhere you can listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Podcoin, amongst others. Wherever you listen to us, it doesn't matter where you listen. Whatever program it is, use that program to give us a 5 stars, whatever it is on that one. Do that. Subscribe to us. And where can they watch us?
You guys can watch us on YouTube. Just look up the Retro Gamers Podcast, and you can watch our episodes there. And then, obviously, you can check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/RetroGamersPodcast. We're on Instagram at RetroGamersPodcast. Soon to be up and running on Twitch. We're finalizing all of that stuff now. So you guys will be able to watch us do some live streaming on there. Who knows? Maybe we'll even do some podcasting there, Larry. We haven't talked about that yet.
Trust me, I have it in mind.
Yeah, but we definitely got some plans coming up with that, so keep an eye out for our Twitch page, which is TRG_podcast. So, All coming soon.
All right, awesome. And it is fun. I don't say it's been because we're still doing this, but it's a blast doing this, and I think we both had so much fun doing this. Can't think of really anyone else to talk about retro games than you. And here's to another 150, if it was something filthy.
Yeah. At that point, will we have any teeth left, I guess? I think we're going to be like geriatrics at that point.
Like 2 years from now?
Yeah, well, it's us.
Everything is breaking down on me, I know that. So,
oh, I've been broken for years.
And folks, with that, we will catch you right here next week on the Retro Gamers Podcast.